Hi, I'm Will Budge.
Actually,
I'm Premier.
wait a minute here. Okay, we're gonna have to redo that because All right, sorry. Welcome to the Zwift Race Place. I'm Cade Fravel. Joined by Will and Corley on the mic today. Do you guys want to introduce yourselves real quick?
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Will Budge. I'm a Premier League racer for Wahoo Le Col. Been on Zwift for quite a few years now, and just loving it for racing. Corley?
Yeah, hi. So I'm an elite women's racer for Wahoo Le Col. I'm quite new to Zwifting. I used to be a triathlete, then moved to rowing, and now I'm cycling, and I love Zwift. So yeah, that's me.
Okay, that's great. I think before we get started, I want to thank the guys at Wahoo Le Col real quick for putting on this amazing event with us. And real quick, I wanted to thank our leaders, Colin Pink, Bryn Griffith, and Seb Ader, as well as the sweepers, Tim Iveson, Manuel Henry, and Jamie Price, and Stefan Faulkner. So first, I think we're going to jump in with our Velo viewer of today's course, and hopefully we can talk about that real quick, and just talk about some of the basic stats from the course today. Either of you want to start?
Corley, you go ahead.
Sorry, I couldn't hear what you said there.
I think we're just going to start talking about some of the course specs. So, this is going to be the Waistband route in Watopia, and on the ZRL calendar, this is going to be a team time trial. The distance is going to be 25.5 kilometers, and elevation is 95 meters. I think, Coralie, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, just that it's quite a flat route, which is quite nice. Especially when you're in a team time trial, when it comes to hills. Riders can definitely get lost when going up those hills, whereas this is a little bit different, so it's quite a nice one to start off with.
Yeah, absolutely. It's certainly a good one for those who are new to team time trialing. Should be slightly easier to keep everyone together and work a bit more as a team.
Is that better? Cool, great.
Okay, so I think those are the main points on the Velo viewer. I know we have a couple little inclines on course. There's one coming out of the desert when there's a little climb there, a little rise, which is going to be difficult for riders to navigate. And then there's also one coming out of the underground tunnel in Ocean Boulevard. And later on in the stream, I think we should touch on some of those difficulties and how to handle riding inclines and declines in a pace line. But first, I thought we could start about how to start a team time trial as a team, because that's kind of where we are on course right now. So, do you guys have any tips for that?
For team recently, we're making sure that we kind of lead out per kilogram to begin with, or to make sure that everybody's together. Once everyone's then grouped together, because sometimes there can be technical difficulties to begin with, and you don't want to lose like a bunch of riders at the beginning. You want to have as many people as you can, and then when we're all together, then we can set go up and then do our time run.
Yeah, that's a really good point about making sure that everyone is together at the start. Because even if you lose, say, 5 seconds waiting for everyone to get successfully out of the pen, having that extra 1 or 2 riders that you might have gone off without over the course of the whole time trial, that's going to save you so much more time.
Exactly, and if people are, having to try super hard to get with the the rest of the group, it's already putting a lot of pressure on them, of maybe even making them tired before even the race has even started. So just being kind of patient and making sure everyone's together, and then you can really go for it.
Okay, I think that pretty much covers it. Those were a lot of great tips, and I think just for riders who are like ultra beginners, how do you guys know when to leave the pens? Do you have somebody on Discord timing it, or do you each have your own individual timer, so that you know what time to take off?
Well, for our team recently, we've been, let's say you have a 4-minute delay, we make sure that there's somebody that has a stopwatch who's counting that, because when you get into the pen, it goes to 0. You obviously have no idea because it doesn't keep ticking down for you. So you've got to know as a team when that 4 minutes is up. So sometimes people will just do it individually, make sure that they know what they've got. But there's always at least somebody that's kind of taking that on board and going, right, I'll be the stopwatch today, and then we'll count down every minute, you know how long that we've got, and make sure that nobody's paddling until about 5 seconds to go. Then we pedal.
I've got a tip to add there. That because once the timer goes down to 0, if you start pedaling, you'll start moving. You can actually keep pedaling and stay in the pen if you're in the pairing screen. So the one where you select your trainer, your cadence, your heart rate monitor. If you're in that screen, then you can pedal as much as you want, but you won't go anywhere.
As long as you know what you're doing.
Yeah. So it really helps if you've got someone who is assigned to give you your start time, if you're using that, because then as soon as you get down to 0, if everyone then exits out of the pairing screen by pressing escape on your keyboard or menu on your remote, or however your device gets out of it, then you can start all together and at 200, 300, 400 watts. So you do get that little bit of extra boost straight away if you can manage to coordinate it.
Well, that's the thing, it's coordinating it. For me, I'd be too scared. But maybe it's something that we look at doing more in the future for my team anyway. Because I know that if you cross that line early, then pretty sure you get disqualified. So it's one of the things that sort of sneak into play.
Yeah, it's definitely something that you want to practice in advance.
Yeah, for sure.
Maybe if your team does the WTRL Thursday team time trial series, then that's a great place to get that technique nailed down before you start in the ZRL, where the stakes are a little higher.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, I see. Sure. So like hone your technique in other races before you to help you master the ZRL. So I think riders should pretty much have the start covered now. So I wanted to talk a little about riding in a pace line before we move on, but a couple points real quick. If you guys who are watching have any questions, feel free to leave questions in the Zwift chat or in my YouTube chat. I'm watching both currently. And to my second point, the course right now, what we're doing is mostly flat here in the desert, so there's not a ton to comment on right now. We'll talk a little more about the course once we get to that rise coming out of the desert. So, you guys want to start to explain riding in a pace line and maybe some more advanced techniques that you'd use in a pace line as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's slightly different in Zwift because there are a number of different tactics that you can use out in real life. It's always quicker to be riding in a straight line, and then the front rider peels off and goes to the back, just keeping that pace very consistent. But in Zwift, that's one way you can do it. And you want to make sure that the rider coming off the front is really slowing down, because you may have heard of something called sticky draft, which is where if you're really close to the back wheel of the rider in front, then you can kind of get stuck to it. Even if you're going a little bit harder than them, you have to really push to get past. So if you're pulling off the front, you don't want to be slowing down and have the person taking over stuck to your wheel. So you want to really drop those watts, freewheel for a couple of seconds until you've dropped back enough that you're safely at the back of the line and recovering.
Okay,
Yeah.
oh, go ahead.
I was going to say it's really important that what you're saying about getting to the back and recovering, because with Zwift, it's so easy to just push hard and kind of go, oh my gosh, I'm struggling so much, I'm having to push so hard, whereas if you just kind of allow yourself to ease off, you'll find that you will stay with the pack, with the draft. Just making sure that when you have the front, you've just done that hard effort. Let the other people in front do that and you recover, because it's so important, especially when you're getting close to the end. You want to have reserved as much energy as you can to then keep taking those hard efforts at the front.
Okay, I see. So, like, kind of when you're in the draft, in the TTT, and being pulled by others, you want to really rest up as best as you can, because working hard isn't going to help you or your team at all later.
Yes.
I think that's a great tip. And I was wondering if either of you could talk to how to handle gaps and communicating that when you're in a pace line. Like if a gap opens up in the team and say the back three riders have fallen off from the front two or three, how would you communicate that, and how do you get your riders back together?
Yeah, it's a really, really interesting question, because it happens a lot. And it might be when you're climbing up a hill, it could be literally could be anywhere. And it's realizing that can make a huge difference. If you've got 4 people at the front that are pushing on and 2 at the back, those 4 will just fly in front. But quite often, if you're at the start of the race, it's kind of going, well, you still need those 2 riders. So it's being able to say, right, there's a gap opening up. It's quite hard sometimes to see that if you're at the front. So having a DS or somebody just aware of what's going on and calling that can make a huge difference. Or even if you're at the back yourself, is being vocal and saying, look, I'm dropping off, hold up. So it's so much about communication.
Yeah, that's definitely true. It's about if you're the one dropping back, then you want to communicate that you're falling off a little bit, so that everyone else knows that they might have to adjust their pace. But also, if you're behind the person who's opening the gap and you're able to close it, then just giving them that little bit of reassurance. Yeah, I'll come through. I'll fill the gap. Then that can just help to, I guess, calm the situation quite quickly. And yeah, once you get a little bit further into the race, you also have to assess whether the person who's falling off the back might just be completely dead and might not be able to contribute anymore. In which case, that's kind of another quick decision that you need to make to decide whether to go on without them at that point.
Yeah, for sure. And then I think also when you're at the front, if you're taking, let's say, a 30-second effort yourself, you know that you're going to be driving for a certain wattage. But on the screen, you might not necessarily see your team that's behind you. I mean, at the bottom, it should say the people that are just behind you and how many meters. Or on the right-hand tab, group riders nearby will still tell you how many seconds they're behind. But sometimes, if you're going hill, then you can get swamped. So if you're at the front and you're driving and you think, oh, they're quite far behind me, I need to slow up, there's a danger. If you slow up too much, the riders will just swamp you, and that's you already done your effort. So it's definitely about experience of knowing, right, I'm going up a hill right now. I'm sticking to my watts. The others will hopefully catch me. And if not, and if a gap does appear, that's when the people in the rest of your team need to say, look, hold up. There's a gap appearing. Let's just hold it at the front there. So it's all about teamwork and all about the communication.
Okay, and I think I want to get into communication a little more in just a couple minutes as well, because I think that's super important also. But right now on course, we just hit this little incline, and I was wondering if you guys had any tips for handling an incline like this and the decline that's going to follow as a group, because this is a place where gaps can open up pretty easily. So a couple points would be maybe, who do you put on the front? Like, if you're on an incline, do you put your lightest rider, your weakest rider, your heaviest rider, your strongest rider? And then would you stay in a pace line, or would you try and blob up and kind of sprint up the hill as a group?
If I just cover that first bit, I'd say going up the hill, especially for heavier riders, they're always going to find it a little bit harder, and also the weaker riders, because that difference in watts per kilogram is going to be a little bit more exaggerated at the slower speeds going uphill. So I'd say you always want your strongest riders at the front, so that even, we can see here, we're going uphill about 17, 18 miles an hour. So there will still be some draft effect. So you definitely want your strongest riders to be shielding the weaker riders, so that they can be going a little bit easier as you go up the hill. And strongest doesn't necessarily mean lightest. So yeah, it's not necessarily that you want the lighter on the front and the heavier riders at the back, because going uphill, it's certainly more about strength, but a little bit different going downhill.
Yeah, definitely. And I think also when going uphill, if you've got really strong and light riders, you tend to find that if they push up, you can quite often just be left. So it's going, right, as a team, we're going up to a hill now. We're going to make sure we stay together, but we're all just kind of, we can, but very much being aware of what's going on. Quite often you'll find that there's other teams that you're catching, and if you're catching another team in front of you going up a hill, it can be quite easy to end up sticking with the other team. So you've then got to communicate that you're going to push through them. I think for my team anyway, we tend to bunch more when we go up a hill. Yes, there's draft, but it's going, right, it's okay if we're bunching right now, we're just trying to stay together as much as we can until you get to the top, and then it kind of changes there a little bit.
Okay, that's interesting, because I know when I'm riding team time trials with my team, we tend to bunch up when we're going up the hills as well, and kind of push a little harder up the hills, and we group up a little more instead of keeping that solid pace line format. So I wanted to see what you guys thought about that, and I'm kind of glad that even the pros bunch up on the hill a little too.
Yeah, and it's interesting because, sorry, go on.
Thanks, Carly. Yeah, I was going to say, it's definitely the place where you are more at risk of dropping people. So you definitely don't want that kind of, potentially if you've got 2 meters between each rider and 8 riders, you don't want almost 20 meters between the strongest guy at the front and the weakest guy at the back. You want everyone to be together, so that those gaps that do emerge are smaller and can be closed a bit more quickly.
You were saying that yourself, you and or other people might push up a hill. I mean, for us, making sure that the team is stuck together, and if we feel good, then it's like, right, we're going to push this last bit, because if we can push to the top of the hill and there's like more of a downhill, then you can get a little bit more help on that downhill if you've got a little bit of an effort at the top. If that makes
if everyone just... Sorry, Carly, I couldn't hear you there, so I was talking over you. You go ahead.
No, I was just saying every team's different, and it's about kind of figuring that out between you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think pushing over the top of the hill and just saving a little bit back is definitely a good thing because, if you can increase that speed, you don't want to be going hard at the bottom and then crawling over the top because you are going to be slower and then it's going to take you a lot longer to get back up to speed once you're going downhill. But then on the downhill, just to switch to that side of the coin, it's slightly different because you do just want to be going faster and faster and faster. You don't necessarily want to be trying to hold a pace line going downhill because as you're going quicker, the draft effect will be greater. So the people coming from behind will just naturally be going quicker. So one thing that you want to try to do is just, I say when you're going downhill, just everyone try to get to the front. Just use the speed that you have coming through the pack to increase the speed on the front as you're going through, and everyone just really quickly rotating so that you can really gain some time on the downhills and then regroup a little bit afterwards once it gets flatter again.
Yeah, and I think quite often people will try and do super tucks. Now for this course, I don't know whether that's going to be the case. A lot of people will try and do this to try and preserve energy. Sometimes it's for a few seconds, if your turbo kind of slows down, it's quite hard to then kick it back up in again. So it's being able to understand and look forward and see, right, is it going to be an option, or do we just keep kind of pedaling and using the momentum that we've got going down the hill to get a little bit of a break, or are we going to push now because this is when we can go really fast?
Yeah, I think super tuck on that little downhill that we've just seen. It's kind of it'll be touch and go whether you can get into it or not because super tuck kicks in at kind of I think 57, 58k an hour. I'm not sure what that is in miles an hour.
That's
maybe about.
It's 36 miles per hour.
Okay. Yeah, so if you're just getting to that speed, then if you try to get into the super tuck, you risk then if the decline shallows off a little bit, then you might come out of it, and by the time you've realised and started pedaling again, you're just losing speed for everyone.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, exactly.
If you're, I'd say only use the super tuck if you're really confident that you're going to get up to that speed and then be able to hold it in the super tuck.
Exactly, and I don't know if you can do that for this course. So
no, I'd
for
say
others maybe.
Yeah, maybe right at the top level they'll be going at the right speed, but
yeah.
I'd say for most people, probably not quite an option. But on a course where it is possible, I like to just hang at the back of the group, and then once I hit the back, really give it a quick 5-6 second sprint so that I'm really using the momentum that I've got coming through the pack, and then by the time you burst onto the front at a high speed in the super tuck, that's going to keep you at that high speed if you're going well over what the speed that you need to keep it. And if everyone keeps doing that, you'll just keep getting faster and faster.
For sure, and it's interesting you say that about the 5 second kind of effort. So that sometimes what we have done is gone, right, we're feeling good, or anyone's feeling good, 5 second effort, you end up going to the front, and then quite often the rest of the team will kind of get a little bit of a pull behind you, so they'll kind of draft behind you. One.
Okay, and so it sounds like a lot of this comes down to communication as well when you're doing these descents, like making sure everybody knows, are we going to go for the super tuck, are we not? If somebody's drifting off the front or the back, we need to know that. So this kind of brings us into my next question and our next point, which is how to DS or communicate effectively. And so when you're riding in a team time trial, how do you guys signify when you want to switch riders on the front, and how often do you do that?
You go first.
Yeah, so for us on the men's side, what we've been doing recently, we have John, who's our DS, and he will, before we start, he'll set an order in which we're going to pull. And just to make it easier for everyone to remember, what we do is we just put the number of the order that we're in at the front of our name, so everyone can see on the right-hand side of the screen, I'm number one, someone else is number two, and so on, so you know when you're going to be coming in the order. And what John will do is he'll call out who's going to, so once we've blobbed up at the start, and everyone's together, he'll call out, okay, rider number one, you'll go to the front. And one way that you can do it in terms of determining how long you pull is for the DS to then say, right, you're going to go to the front and you're going to take us to 2 minutes and 40 seconds. And then the next person will take over at that point. So yeah, and that just allows you to be a little bit more flexible with the timings, and that way everyone knows, rather than having to calculate in their head what a 30-second pull is and know when the person hit the front. Everyone's on the same page, knowing when the next rider is going to take over.
Yeah, and DSs are actually really amazing if you can get them. And sometimes we've not managed to have any, so we've had to communicate through our team. But having a DS is amazing because they can do exactly what you're saying and say, right, you're going to go at 17:30, and then the next person will go. For our team, we did have almost like a list of who was going to go. But recently, on the Thursday team time trials, kind of been changing up a bit. And because we find that there are some riders that are feeling really strong that day, so they end up being at the front more. And they're like, yeah, I'm feeling good. I'm going to go for another 20 seconds. And then you'll find that the riders that are maybe struggling a bit have more time to ease at the back. And another thing that we've been doing is, not all the time, but some riders will go, right, I'm going to go next. But they're kind of mid-pack. So it allows them to, when the person at the front says, right, I'm peeling off in 10, the person in the middle of the pack can go, right, I'm going. And then they kind of use the momentum and the pull through the rest of the team to get to the front. So as long as the gap that's in there is kind of made up. And sometimes that can be quite useful. So I think sometimes when you're going second, you could be working super hard, and then when you get to the front, you're already done. So it's kind of knowing that, for our team anyway, having a list was fine to begin with. But then when you start to get tired, that kind of changes. So your DS kind of goes, right, this person's on the front. Are you happy to do 30 seconds? Yep, I'm all good. And then they go. And then when they're ready to leave, they say, right, I'm peeling off in 10 or 5. Next person then goes. So again, yeah, it's different for every team. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. So it's about being able to be adaptable on the day as well. But having a DS is massively important. And for us, we find that our DS keeps us very calm. It's quite often we're kind of stressing, who's going next? But he's there and it's like, right, just chill, next person on. So it makes a huge difference.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail right on the head there, Coralie, when you said the word adaptable. Because you can never predict at the beginning of a team time trial who's going to feel like what 30 minutes in. So you have to be communicating how you're feeling and what you're able to do to help the team. And again, being adaptable with your pull order. If, as Coralie says, if you do have someone who's found that they've got a load of momentum and they're coming straight to the front fast, they don't want to put on the brakes. They want to carry that momentum right through to the front and keep the speed up for everyone. And one thing that again is really important to determine is how you're feeling, and if you actually need to skip a turn, which is perfectly all right. Some people, if you've just taken a really hard turn and you're struggling to recover, just taking one turn off, give you an extra couple of minutes to recover. That's really going to help you in the long run. So just communicating that to your team, and then if you've got a DS, then they can be the ones doing the mental maths and moving the order around. That just takes that pressure off everyone else.
Yeah,
100%. And sorry, go on.
I was going to say something you just said about having too much momentum is, I think, what makes team time trialing on Zwift so hard, which is that you don't have breaks, and it can be hard to stop sometimes. So trying to organize your team so that everybody falls into a pace line is really challenging sometimes. And I'm hoping that the new pack dynamics, I think 3.0, is going to help with that a little. Coralie, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. It is very difficult to stay in a pack. I mean, some people who will watch, sometimes if I've done a screen recording, they're like, oh, you need to get your line better. And sometimes that's something that you're trying to do, but that's not the real focus, I guess, not all the time. So even though it doesn't look necessarily pretty, because it's very hard to do, it's very hard to get a strong line. But what I was going to say previously was sometimes you feel like you're really strong at the beginning, and it's going, okay, I feel strong right now, that's fine, but still kind of know that you've still got quite a long way to go. So do your 20, 30-second bursts, but don't go crazy at the beginning, because what can happen is you go mental and going, oh, right, I'm at the front, I've got to push, and then a gap's breaking up, and then people then you have to wait. And then by the time you get to about, let's say, 10K to go, you think, oh, I'm pretty tired now. Whereas if you kind of just eased a little bit more into it, it gives you a little bit more time at the end to start pushing. You don't want to just kind of burn your candle all the way down before you even got halfway. So it's being able to, although you're feeling strong, know that you've still got a long way to go. And like you were saying, you need to take a little bit more rest rather than going and taking your turn again. Take the rest.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, definitely skipping one turn, but that allowing you to stay in the bunch for another 3-4 minutes, that's always going to be more advantageous than, knowing you're on the edge and then deliberately blowing yourself up by being, too proud or stubborn to admit that you need to take that rest for the good of the team.
And it might even be that because you've taken a little bit more rest, by the time that you get towards the end, if there are a couple of riders that are really, really struggling and they need to pull away, you're still able to go, right, there's 4 riders, I can keep going strong to the end. Because that's what you've got to be able to do, is have 4 riders at the very end crossing that line. Ideally have more, but if you can push it and keep that there and drive all the way to the line, then you're onto a good finish.
Okay, and so while we're on the topic of how many riders you have and when you feel like you need to take a rest or you're feeling weaker, I was wondering what you guys had to say about dropping riders and when is the best time to do that, and how should you be communicating that to your team?
On you go.
I'd say with dropping a rider, speaking from my experience in the Premier League, where you've only got 5 riders and 3 have to finish, I'd say you never want to plan to drop a rider. You want to start thinking, right, everyone's going to get to the end. Inevitably, you might not get all 5 to the end, but you never want to go into a situation where you think, right, that a rider 5 is going to drop off halfway through, because then you really put yourself at risk. If someone who is in the remaining 4 has a dropout, or their heart rate monitor stops working, or any number of things, then you're down to 3 riders, and all those 3 in the Premier League have to finish because your time comes off the 3rd rider in the Premier League. So I'd say always try to keep everyone together. But then, if someone does fall off, it's okay. You just need to accept that and then try to adjust appropriately.
Yeah, and I know for the community division leagues, it's 6 riders max, 4 have to finish, and you're timed on the time of the 4th rider. Just to clarify for anybody out there racing community division.
Yeah, and then for the community division, sorry.
So I was just going to say, yeah, that the numbers are different, but still that only gives you 2 riders who can potentially not finish. So yeah, again, you don't want to drop one and then have a technical problem with another, because that again gets you down to the minimum that you need to finish.
Yeah, the ratio is very similar.
Yeah, and exactly, and it's going right. For us, quite often we'll say we need to make sure that we've got all of our riders to a certain point. So we can't afford to lose anyone now. So if somebody is dropping off, we say, we've got to slow down. We've got to make sure we regroup, because we can't afford to lose anyone until we get to a certain point. And then if someone's struggling, we say, look, we've got to make this call. We've got to go now. So again, it's just understanding the course before you then go and ride it, because that can be super important as well. If you drop a rider at the very beginning and then you struggle for the rest of the way, you think, well, we should have just maybe kind of calmed it down a bit and made sure we regrouped.
Yeah, I think knowing the course is a really good point. I remember from, I think, season 2, we had a team time trial on one of the New York courses where you had the KOM right in the middle. But then after the KOM, there was, quite a lot. It was just downhill or flat. So we thought, right, we really want all 5 riders to go over the top of the KOM, because then, even if someone was really struggling, having 5 rather than 4 on that downhill and those flats is really going to help you. And if you might go over the KOM 4 seconds slower, but you're definitely going to make up a bit more time if you've got a big downhill afterwards with more riders in your group.
Yeah.
Okay, so kind of like using the course to your advantage and planning for how you're going to use the course, knowing what will give you an advantage on certain parts of the course. And I think this is a pretty, I hate to say it, but kind of a boring course. It's quite flat everywhere. There's only a couple of inclines, but I think all the riders in this event will definitely be prepared to their fullest. So hopefully anybody watching the stream has already got that one down.
Yeah, I think definitely. This one's pretty flat. You can see we're only at 96 meters. So it's going to be fast. It's going to be pretty difficult because sometimes you can get a little bit of respite when you're going down hills. So for this one, it's just going to be making sure that everyone stays together, but still pushing where you can. Maybe having points in the course where you go, right, we're going to push a little bit here if we can, that kind of thing. So yeah, it's going to be over pretty quickly, but it's going to be tough.
Okay, and the last thing that I wanted to cover, because we're coming up on the finish here. Well, actually, there's a couple of things, but I wanted to talk about how to finish a team time trial as a group, and how you should be pushing for that, and how to make sure that all the riders get across the line safely.
I think for me, it depends on how many riders you've got with you. If you have dropped one off, then it can be a little bit tougher. But if you're coming into the last, let's say 2-3 kilometers with all of your riders, then I think that is a good time for, if someone isn't feeling as good, then they can just absolutely empty the tank, do what I call a suicide pull, and just go to the front and absolutely, not smash it in terms of a sprint, because then you'll drop everyone else, but really have that high power, increase the speed of the group for as long as you can, and then until you just completely blow up, because that at the end will increase the speed. and you're reducing the risk of not finishing with enough if you know that you've only got another minute or two with a reduced number of riders.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting when you get to the race, especially in time trial. Doing the time trial is tough in itself, and you think, oh, I've still got however many kilometers to go. But when you then get to the end, almost something to your brain to go. Suddenly you feel that you've actually got a little bit more in you. So that's the time to really, like you said, start pushing, because you'll find, well, for me anyway, somehow I usually manage to find something left. I can then really start pushing, and then our DS will go, right, time to go. And then you absolutely go for it just at the very end. And you just, for us anyway, we just try and sprint as hard as we can to get over that line.
Yeah, I think my team handles it in a similar way when we're coming to the finish. It's usually like everyone all out to the finish, and if we have an extra rider, then it's okay if that rider starts to drop off. But if we have our 4, because for us you have to finish with 4, or if you're in the Premier League 3, it's important to try and make sure nobody sprints off the front, I think, because that's not really helping anybody since you're timed on the 3rd rider or 4th rider, and then they're just wasting watts, basically.
So I guess it's knowing, right, we're all going to sprint at the end. Because, I mean, you might be going quite hard and then somebody else sprints and you go, oh, I've got to sprint. So for us anyway, we just go for it. But not like a couple of minutes before the end. We're talking like, I don't know, like 20 seconds towards the end. We just go as hard as we can. And usually we finish pretty much within like exactly the same time or a second behind. So yeah, that seems to work well for us. But again, everyone's different.
Yeah, it's almost like a sprint finish at the end of a race once you get to that final 300, 200 meters, because depending on what kind of athlete you are mentally, you can either think, right, I want to not be the last person over the line, or you can think, I want to be the first person over the line, and just everyone trying to not be at the back. If they're at the back, they'll speed up. Or if everyone's trying to get to the front, that's just going to give you a really strong finish, and hopefully a better time that could be the difference between 1 or 2 positions at the end of the day.
Exactly, and I think when you're sprinting, even if you're not doing a time trial, if you're just doing a normal kind of road race, if you're at the front and you sprint, people will still get your draft as long as they stay as close as possible and they start sprinting as well. So it's not like if somebody at the front sprints, everyone just loses the drag. They'll get that as long as they know, right, we're going to go as well. So it's just been going, right, the DS is saying go, this is when we go.
Okay, so again, that DS role coming into play. And I know you mentioned earlier, Corley, how important that is. So I think for anybody out there watching who doesn't currently have one, maybe try and contact somebody on your team who's not racing, and that'd be a great thing to get before this upcoming race. If we're talking about tips for things you can do right now, it looks like we've just come through the finishing banner on course in Zwift here. A lot of riders sprinted for that one. So I think we were planning on ending the stream right after 1 lap, but I wanted to give riders one last chance to ask questions to our pro commentators before we sign off. So either in the Zwift chat or the YouTube chat, you can leave your questions there. And if there are none, that's fine. I think that just means I did my job well. And you guys did an awesome job giving tips. So we'll just we'll wait a few seconds here and see if any come through.
And that's very generous of you, Kate. I've never been called a pro commentator before.
Likewise. I guess just for me, in general, I think this course is just about making sure everyone communicates well, tries to stick together as much as they can, and just goes for it, especially towards the end, and just enjoys it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I always find that team time trialing is very much what they call type 2 fun, that it's fun after the event, but not during it.
100%.
But yeah, it's, you know, if you can manage to enjoy it during the time, and one of the things I really enjoy about it is that constant communication with your team, just kind of feeling a little bit more involved with your teammates and knowing how they're feeling. I think it definitely helps to bring you together a little bit better. So yeah, if there are no questions, then I'd just like to finish by saying thanks to Cade, and thanks to everyone at Wahoo Le Col who got this ride together, and hopefully there'll be plenty more good recons going on over the next 8 weeks, and good luck to everyone for their team time trials on Tuesday.
I second that.
All right. So I think that's about it for us right now. Once again, thank you, Will and Coralie. I think we had some great insights today. We will be back with this event and this stream next Saturday. I'm blanking on the course, but same deal. It's going to be the ZRL course for the upcoming Tuesday. Another recon ride of that. And I'm not sure who our live commentators will be next week. It's kind of a mystery. But maybe one of you will be back at some point in the 8-week series. Anyway, I'll let you guys get on with your Saturdays. To all our viewers, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week.
Awesome. Thank you. Take care, everyone.
Take care. Bye.